Hand tools, such as this hand plane right here, are just fun to use. I think that's why a lot of us hand tool woodworkers originally delved deep into this niche of the craft, is because the activity of using the tool is fun. And it really doesn't take that much knowledge to tune these up into workable order. Or you can even refine it further. I mean, how much content out there is there on tuning up a hand plane? Or why people like me advocate for a slightly cambered blade in order to get a straight plane, which makes no sense whatsoever. But there's a lot of information out there on what little knowledge you need to use a tool like a hand plane really, really well. But are there any applications for using a hand plane that's out of tune? Or skills that you don't have right now that you can compensate for with other techniques? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So come along, let's play around with some untuned hand planes. Okay, real quickly, let's kind of define a baseline of what a tuned hand plane is. You know, you have a nice long plane right here, and the idea is that we want to get that plane blade just underneath your blade so that you can take a nice curly shaving, you know, point a thousandths, or how many zeros? A thousandths, 2,000ths, 5,000ths, that kind of stuff. And if you're hogging off a lot of material, you're looking for that perfect shaving, you know, a 1/16 of an inch or something like that. But the idea is also, that's the side of the plane. If you're looking at the front of the plane, we want that blade to protrude exactly even all the way across. Or if you're the person looking for that perfectly flat surface, like me, we like to add a camber to that so that the edges of the blades are actually up underneath that. And obviously I'm exaggerating right here. So it feathers in, and that slight curling allows you to accomplish some things like getting your miters, your joints dead perfect. For example, if I were jointing a board and the board was slightly cambered like that, I could use the angle of the blade to take off a little bit more on this side or that side simply by where I put that board on my blade. Little tricks like that. A properly detuned blade has a blade perfectly centered, perfectly parallel with the tool. Now, when you are jointing a board, most of the time I use my jack plane for my jointing work simply because I don't build big stuff. I build smaller stuff. And this length right here for, you know, like a 12 to 24 inch box, that's more than enough to get it flat enough for jointing. If you're doing cabinet work, yeah, you want to have the big longer planes, but it's all relative to the project. But the idea is that we come over and we use proper body techniques after getting our blades perfectly set up so it takes off a little bit. Its deepest cut is in the middle if you're using a camber, or it's perfectly parallel if you're not. Then we'll come over, we'll place in the dead center. We'll use our thumb on the very front. We'll tuck our fingers up underneath it to control the placement on the blade. And then we will make a perfectly 90-degree cut, right? Well, how many of us get that right every single time? I mean, you lean pressure a little bit over one side or the other, and you end up getting an 89.5-degree cut or a 91 or something like that, and it just doesn't match up perfectly if you're doing butt joints or anything like that, where it needs to be. Yes, you can plane two boards together so that their included angles add up to 180, so when you rotate them over, they're perfectly jointed. But really, we don't kind of work that way most of the time. We want to get that perfect 90 degrees. So is there a trick for those of us that don't have that skill yet or practice that much yet? Sure. You see, most quality vintage planes and pretty much all the newest ones out there, they design them to tolerances so this 90 degrees on the edge is pretty much dialed on. Obviously, you want to check that when you first get your plane, but once you've got it set to 90 degrees, it's never really going to go out that much at all. So if you already know this is 90 degrees and you have the ability to get that even by simply lining up the shadow on either side so it's even all the way across, why can't we just use it on its side to that? Well, we have that little lip right there. So all you really need to do is somehow get your board up high enough so it's centered on your blade. So what a lot of us will do, drop one board down, drop the board you want to joint on top of that, secure it down, and now you can use your plane as a side jointer. Just cut it along the side. You're not only going to get a straight cut, but it's going to be 90 degrees. I want you to think about this. What if we set our blade purposely askew, where the angle of the blade was coming off like that? What would happen? Okay, here's my block plane right here. I'm choosing this one because the blade is a little bit about, an inch and a half right there. And you can see from the front that I've got it set up heavily skewed. The back of the blade is way over on this side, so the angle of the blade is kind of coming up like that right there. Maybe if I look at the edge, well, maybe this side would be better. You can see that the shadow caused by the sharp blade, because light doesn't reflect back off a sharp blade, the shadow is a triangle. It's heavy cut over here, thin over there. So up on top, I'm not making any kind of shaving. On the bottom, I'm making a shaving. Definitely out of tune, but is it? So let's real quickly, I'm going to put up a Redneck planing stop. Now, a lot of times in the hand tool world, we want to put a taper on the edge of a board. For example, if you're going into a 1/4 inch groove in like a drawer bottom, well, if you just add a taper to it, it'll slide in there no matter what the thickness is. And having a slightly thicker drawer bottom than a 1/4 inch gives it some strength. So if we could taper this down to a 1/4 inch, great. Well, what if we took our 1.5 inch blade right here and we just constantly referenced it at the same spot with using our fingers over here, and we just kept taking passes. Notice, because this is a very old piece of pine, you can see the color change. I'm only taking it off there and it tapers off. So all of a sudden, I'm getting, using the tool at the same spot over and over and over, I get a 1/4 inch taper that feathers perfectly up to the edge. There's not going to be a lip here. Can you see the difference? Can you see that taper? Just a few passes, right? Can you imagine doing that on maybe a door panel or something like that to get a nice effect? Now here's another one. We all know that a hand plane cannot make a straight edge. You have a very straight line right here. You have a blade that protrudes down this far. Well, the wood's going to contact up here, here, and here. Obviously, we retract our blades quite a bit so that if it's only coming out a thousandth of an inch, well, that curve we generate is basically imperceptible, and we get a straight edge in the real world. But theoretically, you can't make a straight edge with a hand plane. So what would happen if we exaggerated it? What would happen if we purposely made our blade protrude quite a bit, and we exacerbate the problem even more by making the blade short? Could we induce a curve? Let's find out. Now, real quickly, I want you to look at these shelves. These are just utility shelves. I just batched them together for the shop. Straight shelves right here. If you look at, a straight shelf, equal thickness will always look somewhat heavy. Now, there's this idea, a lot of times you see it in Japanese woodworking, well, they will take this edge right here and they will put a curved chamfer. So it'll start out thin there and it'll add just the slightest of curve. We aren't talking that much, but that slight curve underneath it tends to give the look of support, and it thins it out so it looks more elegant. So if I wanted to add that kind of curve to my bottom of my shelves without doing it all the way across, because we want the strength of the thicker shelf, Let's use that out-of-tune plane to accomplish that. So I got my same plane right here, but I did back it off a little bit. So right now it is only taking a shaving starting, bottom third right there. So I'm going to come over to my board, come over here, I'm going to start in the middle. I'm going to just take a quick pass. Notice I'm flat because I want it to be even. I just want to taper it out. So I just take a quick pass right here until it stops cutting. Taper it, push it in a little bit more, do the same thing. Just take a quick pass until it stops cutting. Push it in a little bit more, quick pass until it stops cutting. And one more time, this time I'm just going to start in the middle and lift. And what I end up with, just the slightest of thinning in the middle that comes out a little bit forward, because you can see the curve coming around on this fairly old piece of poplar. Now let's see if we can make an arch with our block paint. Except this time I set it up so it is even all the way across. Can you see that one? There is no taper to it. And just to prove that one, I've got it set to very light shaving right now, and we'll just take it all the way across. Nice thin shaving, okay? So let's go ahead and tighten it up a little bit. Take another one. Tighten it up a little bit more. Take another one. Tighten up a little bit more. Take another one. And keep going until we get the curve we want. And now let's look at what kind of curve we have. Just a slight taper. And you can keep going with that with a shorter and shorter plane, taking thicker and thicker shavings. In fact, that's the principle of a spoke shave. It's just a very short bedded blade. So if you want to add curve, you just protrude the blade a little bit and keep working it. Except by using a small plane like your block plane, you can add a gentle curve over a long section for, like, the uprights of a cabinet or something like that, to give it just a little bit more of an organic look. So there are just a few things that can be accomplished with an out-of-tune hand tool. And I do this just introducing a few ideas because I want you to think. A lot of people don't really consider what's happening with their tools. They don't dive deep enough. And if you understand what's actually happening with it, instead of just the steps to tune it, well, that will give you the ability to tune it to functions that you want to accomplish. Adding curves with a straight plane is doable if you just know how to tune it, or untune it, so to speak. Y'all be safe, have fun, and remember, it's always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others. Hey, maybe leave a comment down below on your favorite way to untune a tool. Good news, guys. Graham Blackburn, I have mentioned him in earlier woodworking tips bonus video, mainly because of the books he's written. 3 really well done books that are an encyclopedia of information for us hand tool woodworkers. This guy has a lot of knowledge and skill in using the tools that we love. Well, the good news is he just launched a YouTube channel as of a few weeks ago, and the first few really do look to be well produced, well thought out, well explained. So I would highly recommend you heading over there and subscribing. As of me recording this, he only had about 300 subs, so it'll be a big boost for him, so he'll make some more of this information, so he will give us a lot more of the encyclopedia he has in his head. Go sub now!